So this is the second time making this video because the camera died on me the last time I did, but this is a crazy project. First off, this is the first folder I've ever done of this size. Blade's about 7 inches long. It's called Harbinger. I'm sorry if I sound a little tired. It's been a bit of a long day. This knife has been an absolute journey and a half. There were times when I didn't think I could do it. Times when I wasn't entirely sure how things would come out, but it's fantastic. It's absolutely perfect in almost every way. There are some little things that I would change here and there, but they're just like little personal preference things that don't really affect a whole lot. This is the second knife I've ever done on washers, and it flips really nice actually. A lot better than the first one I did, which was my first folder actually. This one is perfect. Doesn't really drop clothes too well, but it's on washers, so. And the washers are big. They're like this big. If you looked underneath everything, you may be able to tell. You can't really, but they're big washers. One of the important things on making a folder with washers and having it work right is to have big washers. The wider they are, the less horizontal play in the blade you'll have when the pivot is on the verge of being too loose. It just makes everything a lot more stable. The thumb hole here, or it's not really thumb hole, the hole in the blade, or slot, I guess, isn't really for opening. It's just kind of a design element. It does look nice, and it definitely does fit the design, but it's not really a knife here that's designed to be opened there. The flipper tab is huge and gigantic. I mean, that's ridiculous. I mean, I have big hands, and yeah, everything on this is oversized, monstrous big. Even the stop pin is, I think, close to 300 thousandths of an inch thick. It's insane. It's got a really lovely detent on here. Very solid. It's impossible to shake this blade out of the handle, even though it's 7 inches long and almost a 1/4 inch thick stock spring steel. It does not shake out of the handle. It's been acid etched, as you can see, because it's a carbon steel. It can rust, so I like to do this on the carbon steel blades because it helps protect them. I find that even when these blades get scratched, that the ferric chloride oxide, I guess, I don't know what the specific molecular name is for the oxide that forms on the surface of the metal is, but the oxides that form tend to fill in gaps when there's a scratch. And I remember the first folder I made was etched as well, and I would be cutting things and it would scratch the finish and it would look awful, and then the next day it would be gone, like it was self-healing almost, which is really cool, and I like that a lot about this. And I find that the feature is accentuated when the knife isn't stone washed. This blade was even too big to fit in a stone washer anyways, so I kind of didn't really have much choice. It's a flat grind from about here down, which it's not a full flat grind, but this blade is wide. It's really, really tall. I would say it's at least 2 inches tall, if not more, right about here. So this is about an inch, inch and a third, I would say, tall grind, and it comes down to, and it's almost a zero. It has the bevel is smaller than it looks. I buffed the edges on carbon steel blades because buffed edges tend to work best on simple steels like this and razor blade steels. Because of the low carbide volume, it doesn't make sense to try and capitalize on what carbide volume there is with a toothy edge. So it will make sense to have an edge that's polished, so you can do push cutting and more precise cuts with it. And so instead of a sawing motion, this will just slice right through. If anyone's familiar with Rad Knives on Instagram, his famous video of him push cutting through the edges of phone book paper, it's because it's polished. If the edge was left a little toothier, it would not happen. let's see. This is a scale lock. As far as I know, I'm the first person to make a folding knife with a handle and a lock setup like this. So basically it's a frame lock, but it's not a frame lock. And it's a liner lock, but it's not a liner lock. It's kind of both, because it has scales, both sides, but it has the lock cut out of the scale too. So even though it's kind of a frame lock, I guess, the titanium is a lot thinner than would be if you wanted this thickness handle. So that saves a lot of weight. It saves a lot of cost. It's easier to make. Mostly putting in all the screws is difficult. This is challenging, to say the least, and the screws have to be 632 or larger because I'm tapping into micarta, and micarta doesn't hold threads as well as metal, obviously, so the bigger threads are kind of necessary. As long as you're careful with it, it's not a problem. I've never had the threads strip. I suppose if you crank on them way too hard when you tighten everything down, then that can cause issues, but I make sure not to do that. Knife has a ceramic detent. Frames are all bead blasted and stone washed nicely. Natural micarta for the stern end of the handles and the backspacer. Bolsters are black micarta, which actually comes out more of like a dark navy blue. I don't know if you can pick that up or not, but it's not black like this knife here. This is black G10. This is black. The black micarta is not quite. It's more of a really dark blue. I thought it would kind of mess everything up, and I thought I'd have to replace it with G10, but it actually works perfect. It's a lot better than I thought it would be. It's fantastic. I really like how this turned out. The edge is practically, I think I said it's practically a zero grind, but the edge is about 5 or 6 thousandths of an inch thick. Really thin. I mean, this is like holding a piece of paper right here, and it's a decent way up the edge. It only starts to get reasonably thick right about here, and the edge still goes far ways down from that, so this thing slices really well. And even when it's dull, it'll still cut well because of the edge geometry. All the hardware has been bronzed. The screw ends holding the scales on, holding the pocket clip in. I like doing it this way, with the screws coming in from the inside. It just looks cleaner than having big screw heads everywhere. Screw heads kind of had to be showing here, but that's okay. The alpha pivot has been bronzed as well, just briefly polished and then bronzed. Because of how thick this thing is, I actually didn't have to trim them down at all. They're even sunk in a little bit, and they're as large as I get them when I buy them. Yeah, this thing is insane. If you look carefully, I don't know if it'll show up, but this side was bronze, same as the other side, but this one came out a little different for some reason. At some angles, it's just pure bronze, but then if you look at it other ways, you can see like deep purples, and there's almost a circle of red in the center of that. I don't know why it happened, but I really like it. If I could figure out why, I'd like to do it more often. Pocket clip is insane. It's huge. It's about 4 inches long, bigger than what most people would call a full-size knife, which I find hilarious. This, even though I consider my knives to be like full-size knives, like real full-size knives, this is insane by even my standards, and this is a fairly normal knife to me. I'm going to talk about this in the next video. This is about a 5-inch blade, and this is a really normal size for me. So this is crazy, even for me. Really hope the guy likes it. I cannot remember his real name off the top of my head, which I'm actually really disappointed in myself for. His Instagram name is Knife Nonya. I'm sure anyone who's followed my page has known about this build for a while, and it's finally done. I'm really happy with it. Lockup is just about perfect. It's a little early. It does kind of press in a little when you grip it, but that only makes the lock even a little stronger. It doesn't really stick. There's a little pop there, but if you just freshly open it, like, that's about where it goes, and it's not sticky really, it just glides over. But if you give it a really good squeeze, it does push it over a little more. That time wasn't even that bad, But there's nothing wrong with a little more engagement. As long as it's not going over the whole way to where this side touches this side, then you know, that's a problem in that case. But this doesn't do that, so it's good. And it doesn't stick. It's good. Nice and smooth. Ceramic detent. Very nice flipping action. It's funny because the knife is so huge and so insane that it breaks all the rules that I would have expected it to have. I expected it to be really heavy. I expected it to have a slow, sluggish action, even with a crazy detent. And this detent isn't as crazy as you might think it is. I mean, it is, but I can open it and not have it go the whole way. But I can't shake it open, and it still fires hard every single time, no matter how you flip it. If you pull back straight from the top, which I actually find it's a little more comfortable to pull from the side because of the hook of the flipper tab. But I kind of designed it that way so it was like a big guard, and it doesn't get in the way. Even like an ice pick grip, even up here, it kind of curves up nicely around the webbing of your hand. It's perfect. I'm really happy with it. You can hold. There's multiple grip positions on this. I tend to prefer, if I'm just holding it and using it, I tend to prefer down here so I can capitalize on the length of the blade and the mass that it has. You can also go up a little further to get more control over down here. And if you notice, the edge is almost right underneath the top of the handle, which is something I want to try and do on most of my designs if possible, because it increases the cutting leverage that I have during a power cut. Basically, if the edge is right below here, then you can put your force almost straight down on the edge. You're not back like this and having to fight a torque disadvantage. Some designs don't allow for that. I'll talk about that in my next video, as that design really doesn't allow for it, but this one's good. It's really nice. I like it a lot. All I need to do is ship it off now. Let me know if there's anything you want me to do with this. I'm still unbelievably disappointed in myself that I can't remember your name off the top of my head. But let me know if there's anything you want done to this and any other requests. But it's done. It's finally done.